Da 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 da. What's my good dear? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Today was an inside day for sure. We are hitting those crazy temperatures. And I think for a better part of this planet that we live on, we are being affected by El Nino, aren't we? And before I went live tonight, I did a little bit of Googling on that because I am somebody who learns by having an experience, having something in my face, something that I have to accept, being smacked up the side of the head sometimes. And, in our failures, because nobody likes to fail, do we? None of us likes that feeling of failure. And so I think for most of us, it's not just empaths and highly sensitives, even though we might take it to heart a little bit more than others. I think, once we make a mistake, once we fail, once we see the truth, once we feel the impact, we try really hard not to go through that experience ever again. You know, it was something that I kind of prided myself in all those positions and all those jobs that I had during the course of my life. That if I made a mistake, management, owners, they always appreciated that I learned from my mistake. Now, whether or not they understood why I was learning from my mistakes, so I wouldn't get yelled at, so I wouldn't be brought to the forefront as the example for others in their failures, that I always learned, right? And, when they say, it's important for us to make mistakes, to fail, to not beat ourselves up in our failure, but to take it as a lesson that will make it so that we're less likely to do it again. And if we were to do it again, and that's okay too, right? That it isn't to the same extent until eventually we learn from that mistake and we become experts, right? How do you think some of these great hockey players and these great basketball players and these great, thinking of sports, the Olympics, how they get to be so good in their craft? It's the fact that they practice. But they're not practicing in what they're getting right. They're practicing at where they're at the moment. Hello, Tammy. There's a lesson in this. Before I came live, I Googled a little bit about the relationship between global warming and El Nino. And what are the lessons are we going to take? It's not like it's the first time we've had an El Nino. The last one we had, oh my goodness, I can't remember when the last one we had. Not too long ago. Was it 2008? Let me just Google it here. And it'll let me know. It wasn't too long ago, 2024. So mid 2023, and it followed through to the middle of 2024. I knew it happened every few years it did happen. And the last one we had was the worst that we had in record. And guess what, you guys? We're in 2026, and this one might go right into 2027, right? And this one is a super El Nino, super El Nino. That one in 2024, I thought was a super El Nino. We barely had any snow here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And if you know this province that I live in at all, right, we are the winter capital of the world. They don't call us Winterpeg for anything or for nothing, right? And but to get back to this El Nino, it's not like we're failing. We don't have control over Mother Nature, right? But we're still failing in it because this happened in 2024. This happens every few years. And look what's going on in Europe, right? In Europe, hardly anybody had air conditioners. Oh my goodness. Those salesmen who were selling air conditioners this year, I bet you they made a pretty penny, didn't they? Because it wasn't something that they utilized because the temperatures didn't get so unbearable that they needed air conditioners. And this year, with the heat waves, people are dying. The forest fires that are wiping out so much acreage in France and in Italy that it is devastating. Here in Canada, BC is struggling with forest fires. Ontario is struggling with their wildfires. Surprisingly, right? We're doing pretty good here. We still have our forest fires, but in comparison to what we had last year, we're doing pretty decently. Plus, I have to say that we learned from our failure in that record forest fire season that we had in 2025, 2024, 2025. It was pretty bad. There were lots of northern communities that were evacuated. They were housed in hotels and different communities here in the city, even brought them even into Winnipeg from all the way up north, right? Flew them all in. It wasn't something that we were 100% prepared for. We have forest fires, but we allot a certain amount of money each year in the budget, right? For fighting forest fires and equipment and manpower and those people who actually, look at where the risk points, what can we do, what has this age of technology that we're sitting in, what it is, has it afforded us in this moment that we could utilize. And they did a lot of that last year. And so this year, we're a little bit more prepared. It's not to say that we're not going to fail, right? Because it sometimes takes lots of failures, right? Trial and error. And we can't beat ourselves up in that, but we can beat ourselves up in not looking at 2025, looking at the future a little bit. And so when I see what's going on with El Nino and the reason why I actually went in and, wanted to see what that relationship was with global warming, because we're in global warming, you guys, right? It's going to be taking us a long time, but the way humans heat the air up, what we're doing to our environment, like, we really need to take a look at it. We have to look for solutions as to how we can slow down the global warming, right? It's still going to come. It's still going to come. But if we slow it down, we can find better solutions, because even though El Nino and global warming are not relatable, they do interact with global warming. As those waters heat up, the weather is going to get more crazy. Hello, Eugene. I see you there, dear. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, Tammy. Right? But it's going to affect El Nino, and we know it's coming every few years. So we need to have organizations. We need to have those smarty pants in place. We need the research and the experts and the financial resources and the manpower and those housing solutions for those communities that we will have to evacuate, right? And also take in mind that this is going to be ongoing. So if we're looking at El Nino, understanding that we don't have any control over the weather, over Mother Nature, it's going to do what it's going to do. And we're going to have to ride those waves. We're going to have to adapt and conquer, but we're going to have to learn in the process too. And yes, we're going to fail in that. But maybe if we can find solutions just to even slow it down a little bit, to better understand it. There's a big one. Better understand it. Because now we can't ignore it. We're getting smacked upside the head. People are dying. People are really struggling. And here I am. I'm sitting here on camera with you guys. But to be all honest, I'm sitting here in my underwear, right? Because it's just so hot. It's unbearable, right? It's so unbearable. Even with the air conditioning, it's unbearable because that humidity is thick, it's heavy. And yes, that humidity is probably good at keeping the forest fires, at least in our province, at bay a little bit. It's uncomfortable for the public. And there are people here, there are lots of vulnerable and homeless in this city in the summertime, right? And they're going to be struggling really, and they are struggling really badly. And, this year, maybe we can't do anything about it because right, we really didn't delve into the last El Nino to get better prepared for this one. But we got a pretty good taste at the effects of what El Nino and global warming is going to look like in the future. It's going to be pretty bad, right? But maybe not so bad if we can, right, get on top of it a little bit, be prepared for it. We won't probably be able to control it, but be able to bear it, right? Because it only does last for not even a half a year, El Nino. And then we're in a good way for a few years. But as global warming, as we warm this world up more, lots of us by our own doing, a lot of it we don't have it control. It's part of the cycle of this world. I mean, even here in this province, I mean, we live in the two extremes where we get that minus 40, minus 50 with the wind chill in the winter time, and then we get the same degrees in the plus ranges in the summertime, maybe not too much into the 50s, right? But well into the 40s for sure with the humidex. Today was the hottest day yet here in Manitoba. And oh my goodness, it was a hot one. I went out and got my business done first thing in the morning, and then I came home. Didn't get too much done. I got what I could done because I'm that forward moving type person, but it wasn't much, right? Just enough that guilt and shame didn't surface, right? Because I'm being a little bit of a office chair gnome today. And that's the truth. I've been sitting in front of the air conditioner and just trying to stay comfortable. And I've got a good air conditioner, but it is struggling. It is struggling too. Struggling so bad that I'm going to probably have to buy a new one for next year, right? But these are things that I can think about now, right? Having this experience that we're having, that I know that my air conditioner is not going to make it another summer, so I can incorporate it into my budget and put it on that goal list so that when a good deal does come up, I'm all over it, right? But this is the same thing that the world in general should be doing when it comes to El Nino, right? I would hate to see it where, right, not just a few people are passing away, but lots of people are passing away because of the crazy town weather, right? What does Tammy say? I believe in global warming since AI Gore started talking about it. Well, it's not a matter of actually believing in it, Tammy. It's a fact, right? It's something this world has dealt with forever and ever. And to get back to that idea of how I live in the two extremes, this province I live in used to be tropical, used to be tropical with great big megalodon sharks and dinosaurs and palm trees. And where I'm sitting right now was part of the Agassiz, right? Which is was an ocean or a sea in itself. And times change, right? It's why they find ships in the middle of the Sahara Desert because they used to be waterways there, right? Egypt used to be tropical and beautiful, right? But now it's desert, it's hot, things are changing, and things are changing at a different rate everywhere's, but everywhere's is changing. Even Antarctica is thawing out, right? And Antarctica used to be tropical with rainforests and jungles and rivers and right? But now it's a big block of ice that's melting. And at one time, not in our generation, not for generations and generations down the road, right? It may be a tropical area again. Who's to say, right? Because we are just starting now to properly document history. We're not deciphering hieroglyphs and Rosetta Stones and right? So at this moment we are going to be able to document the past. And that's going to be pretty incredible, right? There'll be a lot of archaeologists that'll be out of work. But the thing is, there's so much history right now that we've got to get work done, right? That it'll be enough to keep us busy. But moving forward, right? It'll probably just be in a research and not a digging it up kind of thing. Unless you're looking for the valuables, like you're bottle digging and looking for antiques and stuff from the past, right? But who's to say what the future looks like? But I really do hope that we can learn by this experience. I think this was pretty loud, wasn't it? You know, it reminds me, first thing that came to my mind when AIDS hit in the 80s and early 90s. AIDS was big, it was really, really, really scary. Now people are able to live a full life. But when AIDS started wiping people out, they had to delve into it and find solutions and medication and lifestyles to be able to expand in their life, right? It's like Ebola in Africa. They're getting smacked silly with Ebola. We've got to be very careful because, just one businessman or one government official comes back to North America, how fast would it take for it to spread around here, right? I remember when it was like 65 people have Ebola. Now it's thousands, and one out of three people are passing away. That's a huge statistic, isn't it? But it's giving us a chance, right? It's hitting us upside the head and saying we got to do something about this. This is an emergency, like COVID, right? This is an emergency. Now they're looking at solutions. So when the next one hits, because plagues have been around for all of history, even in recent history too, right? We as Europeans coming to North America, we wiped out a huge percentage of the indigenous communities that lived in this on this continent, right? That has to be considered a plague, even if it was like typhoid and diphtheria. We smallpox, like we brought this, and because they had never had associations with these diseases before, it it just devastated these people. These people whose bloodlines are not even moving forward. And that time there were solutions. If we had recognized our mistakes and before we even came over, we could find a solution, understanding what we were going to do by being here, right? To other communities, that there would be a whole lot more people in this world right now. It's things like this because we don't pay attention. We think, oh, this is a fluke, this is just something strange, this isn't going to happen all the time, this isn't a big deal, let's just ride these waves and then get back to life. No, right? In that preparedness for the next one. It's like bird flu, right? We're so, and what do you call that? Hoof and mouth, that disease that the cows have, right? That we have a bit of control over this now. In actuality, we're probably saving a lot of lives and keeping ourselves from getting in really scary situations because we have been in scary situations with these animal diseases transferring into the human aspect of us being well in our own well-beings, that right, we were on it, but we got smacked with it, didn't we? Right? And that's the idea. you know, Life is tough, but we can learn in the toughness. If nothing else, we can learn to be resilience, and that is a big one. If nothing else, I can tell you, I learned resilience. I certainly did. But that was out of the necessity, right? And now we're looking at situations in the world that we probably could have, should have, right? Would have looked at if we had known how bad this year was going to be, right? Those vineyards in Spain, oh my goodness, right? Some of those vineyards are hundreds of years old, been in one family for hundreds of years, that land. And do you think that they're going to give up on that land? They're going to try and find those roots that were devastated. They're going to rebuild. How they're going to do that, right? Who's to say? Those countries over there have a lot of abandoned villages and small cities that have just been walked away from. You can get properties fairly cheap there. Property is probably, if it's not burnt down, it's going to be worth a lot of money now, right? Because people will be looking for roofs over their heads to be able to start over again with some forest, with some greenery, with an opportunity and a chance, right? But not without finding solutions for something better, right? Because it's coming. If we didn't recognize it in 2023, 2024, we're recognizing it now, right? And I think the more that's the one thing about the news at this moment. We all grumble and complain about the news, but it keeps us informed. And it could be somebody on the other side of the world who has that answer, right? And we live in a world where every single one of us is this close to each other now, right? And somebody's going to have that answer, right? And I hope they have those lessons in bravery and courage as a small man to understand that they can have a voice, right? That they can be heard, that there are platforms out there like this one where they can have their say as a small man, that the small man is going to hold the big man accountable and can hold the big man accountable because we see everything, right? Not too much is getting past us anymore. And that's the truth. Okay, let me come into the comments here and see what's going on. I know I lived in Texas and we talked about global warming back in the early 2000s. Texas started getting snow and storms, which is now more common. Yes, I heard they had a snowstorm last winter. It was on the news. Yeah. When I lived there in 17 years, it snowed one time. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. It doesn't snow very much there. Up in the mountains, we have beautiful mountains in British Columbia. They're all snow topped, right? We're big on downhill skiing in British Columbia, but on the ground in the city of Vancouver, I remember waking up on Christmas morning and just praying, right, for a little bit of snow. If we might be lucky to get some frost on the ground, right? But for the most part, it would be melted by lunchtime. Not to say it didn't ever snow in the city of Vancouver. It did. I remember my dad building us kids an igloo in the front yard one year. So I know it did snow. And as you go further north, yes, there's lots of snow. But that's going to change with global warming 100%, right? But yeah, I like the snow. It's something that I appreciate. It's so bright and clean in the wintertime. You know, you could go for a walk in the middle of the night and everything's just, I don't know, it's not like daytime, but it's kind of glowy, right? That you could go for a walk in the middle of the night and not worry that it's super dark outside because the snow just reflects off everything, right? It's like what do you call that? A little fluorescent light or something. Okay, come down here. In the state of Michigan for global warming and El Nino, the summer is like Texas weather now. Very hot and humid a lot. Back in 1989, one day in Texas summer, it was 116 degrees in Carsville, Garceville. Sorry, I can't pronounce that properly, but I'm assuming that's in yeah, it's in Texas. But wow, 116 degrees already here in Manitoba. We had a day where it got to 113 degrees Fahrenheit, right? It was with the humidex. I think it was like 48, late 40s, right? Early 50s with the humidex. It was so hot. It was very, very an uncomfortable day, right? I wouldn't do well in, right, Dubai or Africa, Australia. Some parts of Australia are cooler, um, but Mexico, no way, because Mexico has that dry heat, and that's the worst, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, right, my sisters invited me on their winter trips to Mexico a few times, and I just says I can't do it. I wouldn't enjoy myself. I'd want to be inside the air conditioning the whole time and just every once in a while pop out to the swimming pool, right? But I just don't do well. I just don't do well in the heat. I'm not grumbling and complaining. I'm adapting and conquering, and I'm riding those waves just like everybody else, right? But already I'm looking for solutions for next year, right? It's with the new air conditioner because, mine is struggling. It'll probably work a little bit better when that cool weather comes in, but that cool weather isn't coming in until next week, you guys. So I suspect that Ontario and Michigan, right? You guys are going to struggle a little bit with that heat. Hopefully, it doesn't start any more wildfires than there already are. But they're always starting, right? But I hope that we can stay on top of them to some extent. And the states, right? I think California is struggling a little bit with some forest fires, but for the most part, the states is doing pretty good with their forest fires. We all have wildfires, don't we? And I was actually in the site to look at the statistics of the wildfires, and they said there was 100 and something in Quebec, but 117, but 103 of them were natural causes, meaning the heat and the lightning, right? But that means there were like 10 of them that were started by people, right? So we got to remember that we are contributors to it too. It's just not natural occurrences. So we got to do our little bit of a part in that. Here in the provincial parks and all the provinces, they put up fire bans where you can't have your fire pits going, right? So we're doing whatever we can to make sure that those wildfires don't pop up. And it makes me go right back. What popped into my mind is those drives that my dad used to go. My dad loved road tripping, right? And he'd go for Sunday drives. We'd go for road trips all the time. And my dad was a chain smoker, and I'd be in the back seat. In those days, there were no air conditioning in the car, right? Window rolled all the way down, just letting the wind blast me in my face. And my dad be saying, Cindy, roll the window up. Because my dad wanted to check his cigarette butts out the window. And because he was a chain smoker, he was doing that constant. So I can imagine there isn't a chance in hell that my dad didn't start at least one forest fire for sure, because he really did throw those cigarette. And every once in a while, I wasn't fast enough to get that window up, and the cigarette butt would come flying into the back window, and we'd all be scurrying around, screaming, trying to figure out where the cigarette butt went until we smelt the cigarette smoke or we saw the smoke and then we just grab it and hopefully would, right, that inside of the car wouldn't catch on fire. We'd chuck it out the window. Yeah. But we're learning, aren't we? We are learning from our mistakes and we're learning, right? So much. And it's really good and I think probably, right, it's going to save some lives down the road because we're forward thinking a little bit that that everybody, if they want to have a say, if they have something to contribute, they can come online and they can have their piece, right? They can do the research themselves, just like I did a little bit of Googling or Geminiing, right? To find these answers. And that's going to make all the difference in the world, 100%. Um, I was living in Texas on that 116-degree day in Carsonville, Texas, when we were there helping this one church in the mission field. So you were a missionary, Tammy? You're saying you were a missionary? In France, there are wildfires too. They were talking about it on Michigan radio. Over 200,000 were being evacuated, they said. Yeah, it's over 300,000 people between France and Spain. It is, yeah, it's a bad situation, right? But like I said, we're going to learn from this, right? It's unfortunate we have to ride the waves in that learning, in that experience. And so, we failed in that. We knew El Nino was coming, but we had no clue it was going to be like this. I never heard anybody, I heard that it was going to be bad this year, but it was bad in 23 and 2024. It was bad. It was the worst one yet. It was a record. So we kind of thought, well, maybe we'll be laid up. It won't be as bad as that year was, and we all managed to get through it okay, right? But no, that's not the case. It's something that we have to take serious now. It was the wake up call, right? If we don't think about these things, it's those 360s and those 180-degree turns that whoever or whatever that is calling the shots in this world is saying, okay, they're not getting the message. We're just going to send them out a little bit stronger message until they get it through their thick heads, right? And eventually we get it, right? But whether or not we can do anything about it, we don't know until we start looking for those solutions, right? That's part of the failing process. That's part of the experimenting, the experience, and the adventure, moving forward, right? And it's going to have to be in those choices that we make. Yeah. And also as the small man, keeping the large man accountable, right? Yeah. Okay. Uh, but you're 100% right. Those forest fires in France, right? In Bordeaux, all those vineyards, that's really, really sad, right? They evacuated a whole bunch more today. So yeah, just gotta pay attention. I'm not big on the news. I don't even have a TV, but I am online and things are still coming across my path, right? I want to stay informed, but I don't want to put myself in a state where I'm I'm compulsing about it because I'm still a small man. There isn't much Cindy can do except to come in and do that a little bit, but sometimes that's enough. Maybe it's Tammy who has that brain cell that has that answer, right? and she voices it out there and it gets passed along until it hits somebody who is a bigwig, who does have those resources or that manpower or that insight or that lab jacket that could be able to dig in and really make a difference in it and maybe avoid a catastrophe out there. Yeah, it was a hot one today. It really was. But we're riding the waves, aren't we? We're all riding the waves, doing the very best that we can, and just to stay comfortable and to be kind to each other. Because even for myself, right, I'm not full of energy. I'm not wanting to be out there, wanting to plan a little potluck finger food night out on the third floor patio. One of the tenants here has used the roof and done a beautiful job with vegetables and flowers and arranging the furniture out there. Just a beautiful place for people to go and sit and mingle and socialize. But it's just too darn hot right now, right? But when it cools down, I think it would be lovely if we could put a little bit of an event on. Nothing crazy, but people could make some punches and make some dainies or sandwiches or something, and we could go up on the roof and rub kindly on each other. I think that would be a beautiful thing to do, especially when so much effort has been put into it. It really does look quite beautiful out there, but it's not being used except for the one gentleman when I go to the elevator and I stand at that window and look out at the roof, and he's out there with his watering pots and moving the furniture around and rearranging the decor. It really does look nice, and he's putting a lot of work into it. So, right, we should all partake and enjoy it. He doesn't. He's happy to do it on his own. He's the only one that I see out there working on it, right? But he took it upon himself, and he's doing a lovely job. And I think out of appreciation, we should kind of do something out there, but not until it cools, not until it cools down, you guys. Okay, so that conversation, right? Learn from your mistakes, right? It's okay to fail. It really is. And we don't have any control over, not too much anyway, when it comes to Mother Nature. So we can't beat ourselves up in the situation that we're in right now. But we can be better prepared for that El Nino that's coming this winter, right? And I can expect that our auto pack, which is our car insurance here in this province, is going to go up really high, because with the melt and thaw, that's going to create a lot of car accidents, and that means the insurance is going to go up for people. But we'll see. These are things we can think about now before winter even comes. And even when winter comes, we could start thinking about the next El Nino in the next few years when it arises, understanding with global warming and its contribution in warming up the oceans, that it's going to be a little bit worse every time El Nino decides to rise, right? Stick out its head, right? And create havoc in this world. And I'm saying that lightly because it's not a pretty scene out there. And like I said, it's going to go on till January, they say, maybe well into January, before it starts to ease up for another couple of years. Right? Okay, you guys, let's get into a card. If you don't know, 54 powerful words, right? Uh, Tammy says, I don't watch TV. I listen to the radio and online news. I have to be informed by others around me. Yeah, I normally will have to be informed online, but it's something that I could just go into the Google News or I can go into Window News and it'll pop up right away, the headlines, and I'll know what's most important, what's going on. And of course, I always get sucked into it because there's some new historical, archaeological discovery going on, right? And I get sucked into these articles all the time. And it's frustrating because I don't like the pop up advertising, right? And lots of those sites won't let you watch unless you agree to let them have your information and be able to piddle around with your privates, right? Your private info and stuff. Like when I'm online, right, I want to keep it as tight as I possibly can, right? Especially when I'm not super technically inclined. Okay, you guys, here we go. First perspective, first thing that comes to my mind when I pull the card. Sometimes it's a conversation about an experience. Maybe it's something I learned online, something it's in relationship with my family or my friends or something from my past. Who knows? Ah, pertinent to the conversation tonight. Goals are the choices that just have to happen. Super pertinent to the conversation that we were having tonight, isn't it? And that's the thing. Being on top of what's going on in this world, it's going to be in our choices to say, oh my goodness, okay, let's get on top of this now. We don't want to be dealing with this again to this extent 2 years from now, where we're all going to rebuild, we're all going to replant. And just to have this happen again, we need to look at some solutions and then set some goals, because goals are the choices that just have to happen, right? We do quite often have to get schmooked upside the head a few times before we get the message, but you know, those messages get louder and scarier, right? You know, as they get pounded into the side of our heads, and eventually we're going to have to pay attention, but it's going to be in our choices, right? And we can choose not to look for those solutions. But I think we've gotten to the point now, right? We have to make some choices in that because they just have to happen, right? Yeah, we have to be on top of it. Okay, you guys, that's going to be my good cheer tonight. It has been a busy day, even though I haven't been out. And like I said, that heat got to me just like it's getting to everybody else. But you adapt and conquer. And at the end of the night, right, you turn that air conditioning on you, stay as comfortable as you can, right, knowing it's still going to be here tomorrow, right? But eventually it will ease off. And once we're feeling better, right, we're going to say, oh my goodness, I don't want to deal with that again. What can we do? Right? And all those people in Europe, they'll be purchasing air conditioners for sure in being able to stay comfortable. Yeah, they had an uncomfortable summer. And it's so beautiful there in the summertime. And this summer was ruined for everybody, right? Just like Canada ruined the summer for lots of Americans with all that smoke. But it's unfortunate, right? But it is what it is, and we have to adapt in that. We have to ride those waves, and we've got to set some goals, right? Make some choices because we know we've got to make some choices. It's not a matter of should we, it's a matter of we've got to. Okay, you guys, you have a great night and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for coming in tonight. I so much appreciate it.